How y'all doing?
Hey, Governor. Good to see you.
I just have cotton mouth. Give me just a minute.
Get ready.
Okay, let's get started.
Governor, what new businesses are you trying to attract to Baton Rouge?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to attract new business all over the state of Louisiana. And we're trying to do that primarily by making sure people know that we are business friendly. And the site selection has once again recognized Louisiana as one of the top places in the country to invest and to create a new business. But what I hear more and more from CEOs who are looking to make a big investment in Louisiana or to expand their operations is a commitment to the talent pipeline that they need by supporting higher education, both the community technical college system and our four-year universities, so that they can feel confident that they will have employees who will be successful. That obviously means we have to fix this fiscal cliff. We've got to maintain the momentum we have in higher education, where for the first time in a decade, we didn't cut them relative to state general fund that they had the year before, and we fully funded the TOPS program. We have to continue along these lines, and if we do that, we're going to have business coming to Baton Rouge in a number of areas. For one, the river right here, the interstate, the railroad tracks. We have such an advantage here in the Baton Rouge community, and we just need to make sure that we're taking advantage of those. One of the reasons why I doubled the investment in the port priority program in my first year is to make sure that we're building those ports and prioritizing transportation infrastructure and capital outlay, like the rail chambering yard that we're going to be building over at the Port of Baton Rouge, for example. So we're positioned very, very well. And in fact, right now, Louisiana leads the nation in direct foreign investment. So we have a lot of momentum. We just have to continue to keep it going.
How can you expect businesses and homeowners want to move here when you touched on that crime problem, the rise in homicides here in Baton Rouge?
Well, first of all, it's a great place, and you know there are crime problems all across the country, but it's one that we're going to have to come together and fix, and it can be done. It will be done. I'm optimistic about that. But better working with local agencies, state, bringing in federal grant dollars where they're possible. To make sure that we're doing everything we can from a holistic viewpoint to tackle crime and the underlying causes of crime. You know, I said it in the room a while ago in response to a question. That headline that we had yesterday in the Baton Rouge Advocate here is not one that we want. Not just because of economic investment and job creation purposes, but because of the quality of life of the people who are already here. People who obviously want to be free from fear, to walk down the street, sit on their porch, send their kids to school, and to go about their daily lives. And so for all of those reasons, we have to do better. I believe we will do better.
Governor, going to the budget debate, obviously you've been spending the past few weeks going around the state, sort of campaigning as for action on this here. What sort of insight have business leaders from respective parts of the state offer? Well,
first of all, we've been going all over the state, like you mentioned, meeting with businessmen and businesswomen in every region of the state and every sector of our economy. I'm also meeting with local elected officials and legislators, Republicans and Democrats and members of the House and the Senate and leadership. But one of the things that I get back is quite frankly, the folks who are participating in these discussions have a much better understanding of the nature of the problem, what $1 billion in state general fund really represents. Because the only place you can cut spending is that portion of our state general fund that is discretionary. Well, it's only a little over $3 billion in that pot, and that's where the higher education and the healthcare funding comes from. And so people, once they get an understanding of that, they understand why it's critically important that we fix it. The good news is we don't need new revenue. We just have to replace the temporary revenue that's going off the books, and so we're not looking for more revenue next year. And one of the misconceptions out there is that government's been growing over the years. There's actually $1 billion less state general fund this year than there was 10 years ago. Now that makes it harder to deliver the services, but the good news is, for the first time in a long time, we closed the books last year, and we have a surplus of about $100 million. We don't see any reason to believe currently that we're going to have a mid-year deficit in the current fiscal year. That'll be the first time in a very long time that's happened. And so we've reached a level of stability that we've been needing for a long time. We've got this momentum. We need to keep it going. What does that stability mean? It means you get a chance to fund higher education. It means that you fund it so without a cut relative to the previous year in State General Fund, and you also fund the TOPS program. Well, we've been able to do that. And if we're going to continue to be able to do that and afford people the opportunity to have a better life right here in Louisiana, we're going to come together and fix the cliff.
Last Governor, in regards to the
Yeah.
surplus, will any of that money be used to pay any of the victims in the settlement involved in the 1983 flood? What's that possibility? They really want to know.
Well, I don't see that particular payment happening. You got to understand that every time you have a surplus, the Constitution limits what you can do with it. A certain percentage of it, 25%, has to go to the rainy day fund, and more can go, but 25% has to go. A certain percentage has to go to the unfunded accrued liability in our pension systems. With the rest, you can pay debt. You can build projects in terms of capital construction, and then you can do a couple of other things with it, but you don't have all of the flexibility with surplus dollars that some might think. But I will tell you that the state does need to do a better job of paying judgments. We've been 3 years now where we haven't paid any judgments, and we have to do a better job of that. And those folks who've been waiting for a long time for payment on that 1983 flood, clearly that's something that we need to take care of as well. It's just extremely hard to do that when you have such tight budget constraints as we've had over the last couple of years.
Governor, you issued a statement this morning about the national anthem protest, and I just wanted to clarify something.
The statement wasn't clear?
I want to make sure I'm
Okay.
clear about it.
All right.
On the subject of the Saints subsidies, do you think that the reason those subsidies aren't going to be disrupted is purely because we have a contractual obligation to the Saints, or because you philosophically don't think that there should be a retaliation against the Saints for the protests?
Well, it's the first, not the second. First of all, we don't. This is, and I'm trying to make sure that what I'm saying is absolutely correct, but I believe it is. We don't directly subsidize the Saints anymore. We're not giving them money from the Treasury. Now, there's an operating agreement as to concessions in the Superdome and that sort of thing, but in terms of writing checks to the Saints, we are pretty much out of that business. But there are some things that we do with respect to Benson Tower and some other things that could come into play. First of all, we have a contractual obligation, and like all of our contractual obligations, we need to meet them. Secondly, the only time the First Amendment is truly implicated is when you have government action. And so we often talk about the First Amendment right to expression. That's true. It's incredibly important. That's why it is in the First Amendment. But right now, as it relates to Saint players and their relationship to the Saints team as an employer, the First Amendment is not implicated there. But if the state of Louisiana demands a change in behavior, else we withhold obligations that we owe to the Saints as an organization, then you do trigger the Constitution. And so I don't believe we should do that. I believe we should meet our constitutional obligations. But what we need to do is work and make sure that these concerns can be addressed. I personally don't believe it's the right thing to do is to kneel during the national anthem. I mean, I served in uniform. I think that you ought to render the appropriate respect to the flag and to the national anthem. And I think that there are other more effective ways to protest. One of the things that happened last week, Monday night, for example, and I didn't watch it, but I think I'm right. The Dallas Cowboys went onto the field, took a knee to demonstrate their unity and their concern, and to actually give expression to their concerns. But when the national anthem was played, they stood up. And so you don't have to kneel during the national anthem to get the attention that you're trying to get. And so if the Saints could move in that direction, I think everyone would be benefited from it. And that's what I'm seeking to do, is to restore a sense of unity around this. There's so much more that unifies us than divides us if we choose to focus on those things. And we can engage in good discourse about all of these issues, but you can't do it if you're yelling past one another.
Have you talked to the Saints or Mr. Benson about this issue, or are you planning on talking to him about it?
I have not talked to Mr. Benson. I have had conversations with individuals in the Saints organization in an effort to make sure that we get this resolved. It's a whole lot more important to focus on resolving the issue than it is in giving public statements and other things where you're just potentially trying to take political advantage of the situation. And so yes, I have had conversations, and I'm not going to disclose with you right now exactly what those conversations were.
All right.